today calling Fucci a coward and a ruthless, unremorseful villain.
Aiden Fucci, who stabbed his classmate 114 times, and Alyssa Bustamante, who brutally murdered her 9-year-old neighbor, are just two examples of teenage killers who will spend the rest of their lives behind bars. Their crimes are heinous, their motives disturbing, and their fate is proof of the harsh reality of the justice system.
I took the path of the devil, I really did. Instead of keeping my faith with the Lord, I let the devil.
So, what went on with these kids? Are dark forces at work, or just natural-born psychos? Demons, evil vibes, or just zero empathy? Let's find out. David Moses. David Moses didn't seem sorry in court, looking bored and even smiling as he listened to the charges. And it was this very lack of remorse that had devastating consequences in 2010, when he shattered the peace in a quiet neighborhood in northeast Bakersfield with a terrible crime that left residents reeling in fear and loss. 81-year-old Dorothy Sessions was in her home preparing dinner when her life was brutally taken by two teenagers in a senseless act of violence. David Moses, a juvenile on probation, and his accomplice, Katyan Nash, broke into Sessions' home with the intent to burglarize it. However, when Sessions confronted them, they unleashed a brutal attack, beating her until she was unrecognizable. The attack was so vicious that it left police officers and the whole community in shock. When the case went to trial, it came out that David had a really troubled past. He had been abused and had a long history of doing some really terrible things, including hurting his own sister and cousin and 7 other kids. Even though he was sent to a group home for help, he got stuck in a cycle of violence that ultimately led him to kill Dorothy Sessions. During the trial, David displayed behavior that was unsettling to the court, appearing bored and even amused, chuckling, yawning, and at times seeming to fall asleep in his chair. This behavior suggested a chilling detachment from the gravity of his situation and the heinous nature of his crime. The jury ultimately convicted David and Nash of first-degree murder. Prosecutor David Wilson spoke of David's past abuse, but emphasized that he had become a dangerous individual who had crossed a line from which there was no return. As everyone in the courtroom waited for the sentence, they knew it would finally bring some closure to Dorothy Sessions' family. David got what was coming to him, and there was only one spot for someone as dangerous as him: spending the rest of his days in prison. Jennifer Lee. Next up is the trial of Jennifer Lee, also known as the Hiccup Girl, which was a wild ride that captivated the nation. The former internet celeb faced the music for her role in the murder of Shannon Griffin. The prosecution had a rock-solid case, with damning evidence and witness testimony that painted a picture of Lee as the mastermind behind the robbery that led to Griffin's death. But how did she go from viral sensation to alleged murderer? Lee's story began in a humble St. Petersburg, Florida neighborhood, where she was just another teenager until a weird medical condition made her famous. Her hiccups, which lasted for weeks, captured the hearts of Americans and led to TV appearances and public sympathy. However, behind the scenes, Lee's life was far from perfect. As the hiccups subsided, so did the spotlight, and Lee began hanging out with a sketchy crowd. That's when she met Shannon Griffin, a 22-year-old Walmart worker with a kind heart. The two started chatting online, and things seemed innocent at first, but they were cooking up a sinister plot. Lee, along with her roommates, hatched a plan to rob Griffin, and the trap was set. On that fateful day, Griffin walked into a vacant home, expecting to meet Lee, but instead, he found himself face to face with danger. Lee played the role of bait, leading Griffin around the property, where her accomplices lay in wait, armed and dangerous. The encounter quickly escalated, and Griffin was shot 4 times in a brutal act that left him lifeless. The police responded swiftly, and Lee and her accomplices were arrested and taken into custody. The 3 suspects admitted to their roles in the crime. The prosecution's case was solid, with forensic experts testifying that DNA evidence linked Lee to the crime. The defense tried to humanize Lee, claiming she suffered from schizophrenia and Tourette's syndrome, but it didn't quite stick. In the end, Lee was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. T.J. Lane. This list wouldn't be complete without bringing up T.J. Lane, who walked into court like he owned the place, and was wearing a t-shirt bearing the word killer. From the get-go, it was clear that the trial would be different. No apologies, no ounce of remorse. Just TJ, unapologetically himself. But to understand how he got here, let's rewind a bit. TJ's life was a roller coaster from the start. He was raised in a family where chaos was practically a member, so he never stood a chance at a normal childhood. His father, Thomas Lane Jr., was more of a menace than a dad, with a rap sheet longer than a receipt, including some serious charges against women, even with TJ's own mother. So it's no wonder the kid grew up fast, navigating life uncertainties like it was going out of style. When TJ landed at Chardon High School, he wasn't exactly the life of the party. He was more of a lone wolf, keeping his family drama on the down low and avoiding getting too cozy with the popular crowd. While other kids were joining clubs or hitting up sports teams, TJ was more content to fly solo, nursing his private demons. But things took a dark turn when TJ started writing some seriously disturbing stuff on social media. We are talking unsettling messages that could give you goosebumps. It was like he was broadcasting his descent into madness for all the world to see. And yet, nobody seemed to take notice until it was too late. Then came that infamous day in February 2012. TJ waltzed into Chardon High's cafeteria armed with a pistol, with a bone to pick and a score to settle. By the time he was done with the shooting, 3 students were dead, and 2 more were hanging on for their dear life. The whole town was left reeling, trying to make sense of the senseless. Fast forward to the trial, and TJ's antics were straight out of a horror movie. With every snide remark and smug grin, he seemed to revel in the pain he caused like it was some sick game to him. And when he finally faced the families of his victims, he didn't hold back, spewing venomous and curse words that cut deeper than any knife. In the end, justice prevailed. Despite TJ Lane's sickening crimes and lack of remorse, the judge handed down a verdict that was crystal clear. 3 life sentences, no possibility of parole, no chance to harm anyone else ever again. It was the final nail in the coffin for TJ, the unapologetic killer who maybe thought he was above the law. During his 18th-month stint at Allen Oakwood Correctional Institution, TJ got in trouble 7 times. From peeing on walls to giving himself tattoos, he had a knack for breaking the rules. And he wasn't a fan of doing his assignments either, which cost him some chill time. Then, one day, he and 2 buddies made a run for it, scaling a fence and escaping. But the joyride didn't last long. They got caught pretty quickly. When the cops caught Lane, he didn't spill the beans on why they bolted. Long story short, TJ got back to the slammer after his brief taste of freedom. Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero. Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero's tumultuous saga mirrored Bonnie and Clyde's infamous crime spree, captivating the nation with its mix of love, desire, and murder. In Las Vegas, a tale of teenage romance turned into a nightmare that shook the community. Sierra and Aaron, 2 young lovers, found themselves at the center of a harrowing investigation that unveiled a sinister plot. Daniel Halseth, Sierra's dad, seemed like a great family guy and musician, but his marriage to Elizabeth was actually falling apart due to domestic abuse allegations. The divorce and custody battle that followed was super ugly and left lasting scars. Daniel leaned on his kids, especially Sierra, for support, but as she entered her teens, she fell hard for Aaron Guerrero, a rebellious 18-year-old. Their relationship started in June 2020 and quickly became a major issue. Daniel tried to keep Sierra away from Aaron, but that only made things worse and set off a chain reaction that would end in tragedy. The tension finally snapped in the early hours of April 8, 2021, when Sierra and Aaron went on a creepy shopping spree, buying stuff they would later use in a horrific crime. In the days following the murder, which occurred on April 2021, they went on a spending spree using Daniel's credit cards, leaving a trail of transactions that would help seal their fate. The details of the murder were gruesome. Daniel had been stabbed over 70 times, his body placed in a sleeping bag, and an attempt made to dismember it with a chainsaw and circular saw before setting it ablaze. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Daniel's disapproval of Sierra's relationship with Guerrero had played a significant role in the events that led to his murder. A thrilling video emerged, showing the couple joking about the crime, with Aaron saying, "Welcome back to our YouTube channel," and Sierra responding, "Wow, don't put that on camera." This disturbing footage became a key piece of evidence, revealing their twisted mindset and implicating them further in the crime. The pair were found guilty of open murder and credit card fraud, and they faced the music in a courtroom where the weight of their crime was palpable. Sierra delivered a heart-wrenching account, reading a letter that detailed her allegations of sexual abuse and harassment at the hands of her father, whom she described as a drug addict and pedophile. Aaron expressed remorse, apologizing to Daniel's family, and acknowledging that he didn't deserve to die in such a horrible way. In the end, Sierra and Aaron were sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Brenda Spencer. Brenda Spencer's life took a tough turn after her parents split up. She and her dad lived in poverty, sharing a mattress on the living room floor in a house filled with empty booze bottles. Later, she claimed her mom neglected her and her dad abused her, but her parents disputed these allegations. At the time, Brenda lived across the street from the school, a 16-year-old with bright red hair and a rebellious attitude. Friends and acquaintances described Brenda as hostile towards cops, with a desire to harm them. She had even talked about doing something drastic to get on TV. Despite showing talent in photography and winning a Humane Society contest, she was disconnected from school. At Patrick Henry High, a teacher often wondered if she was even awake in class. Later, tests revealed she had a brain injury from a bike accident. Brenda called herself a radical and slammed cops as pigs. She would cheer when she saw the news about cops getting killed. Classmates found her intimidating and even called her crazy. She was referred to a problem student facility for truancy, where staff noted she was suicidal. That summer in 1979, she got arrested for shooting out elementary school windows and burglary. In December 1978, a psychiatric evaluation suggested she needed mental hospital care for depression, but her dad refused. Instead, he gifted her a semi-automatic rifle and ammo for Christmas. Brenda later said she asked for a radio, but her dad wanted her to harm herself. Monday, January 29, 1979, started like any other day at Grover Cleveland Elementary. But then, chaos erupted. Brenda Spencer, firing from her house across the street, targeted children waiting for Principal Burton Ragg to open the gates. She shot 9-year-old Cam Miller first, simply because he was wearing her favorite color, blue. 8 children were injured, and Ragg and custodian Mike Sucher lost their lives trying to protect them. Police officer Robert Robb was also wounded in the neck as he arrived on the scene. But the carnage could have been worse if not for the quick thinking of police, who used a garbage truck to block Spencer's line of fire. After firing 36 shots, she barricaded herself inside her home, taunting authorities with awkward statements. In a call to a reporter, she infamously said, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." Later, she surrendered and was arrested, reportedly after being promised a Burger King meal. Brenda was charged and pleaded guilty to murder and assault charges. On her 18th birthday, she was sentenced to life in prison. While serving time, she was diagnosed with epilepsy and depression and worked repairing electronic equipment. In 1993, she became eligible for parole hearings, but her fate remains a controversial topic to this day. Brenda's first parole hearing revealed some shocking insights. She confessed to hoping police would shoot her during the incident, and admitted to using alcohol and drugs at the time, despite negative drug test results. 8 years later, in 2001, Brenda made another stunning claim, that her father had physically and sexually abused her. However, her father denied these allegations, and the parole board chairman questioned their validity since she hadn't mentioned them before. In 2005, a deputy district attorney pointed to an incident of self-harm from 4 years prior, where Spencer had carved the words "unforgiven" and "alone" into her skin, as evidence of her psychosis and unsuitability for release. The parole board agreed, and Spencer was denied parole again in 2009, with a 10-year wait before her next hearing. In 2022, the Board of Parole Hearings deemed her unsuitable for parole once more, pushing her next opportunity to 2025. Today, Spencer remains incarcerated at the California Institution for Women in Chino, United States. Austin Meyers and Timothy Mosley. Austin Meyers and Justin Back were inseparable back in the day, practically joined at the hip since their middle school days, cruising through 7th and 8th grade together like a dynamic duo. Then, zooming ahead to 2013, Justin had tossed his cap at Waynesville High School and was gearing up to sail into the Navy. But little did he know, that fate had a gruesome plan in store. It began with a tantalizing proposition from Meyers to Timothy Mosley, a 19-year-old acquaintance he thought might be interested in a lucrative opportunity. Mosley's curiosity was piqued, and the two started scheming together, dreaming up potential targets for their get-rich-quick plan. They considered hitting up a drug dealer, or Mark Cates, Justin's stepfather, who allegedly had a safe stuffed with money and a gun. Meyers had his eyes on the prize, convinced that Cates' safe contained a whopping $20,000. The duo drove to Justin's house in Waynesville, intent on burglarizing the safe, but their plans were foiled when they realized Back was home. Refusing to give up, they reorganized and concocted a new plan. Meyers suggested the shocking idea of murdering Justin. The plan was to strangle him with a wire, making it appear as though Back had stolen the safe and fled. Meyers set to work, crafting a garrote from a 3-foot steel cable and 2 metal rope cleats. The scene was set for a gruesome crime, and the duo was prepared to execute their sinister plan the very next day. On the morning of January 28, 2014, Meyers and Mosley purchased septic enzymes, ammonia, septic tank cleaner, and rubber gloves. They then drove to Justin's home and arrived around 1 p.m. Their strategy was for Meyers to distract Justin while Mosley strangled him with the garrote. Mosley armed himself with the garrote as well as a 6-inch pocket knife. With a knock on the door, Meyers gained entry to the family home, and Justin unsuspectingly let the pair inside, unaware of the horror that awaited him. The three guys talked for a while, and afterward, Justin went to the kitchen. Seeing the opportunity, Mosley attacked Justin from behind and attempted to strangle him, while Meyers held Justin from the front. Justin fought against them, and the three men struggled, resulting in all of them falling onto the kitchen floor. Meyers notified Mosley that the wire was across Justin's chin instead of around his neck. Mosley then pulled out his knife and stabbed Justin from behind. Afterward, Meyers placed the garrote around Justin's throat while Mosley stabbed Justin 21 times in the chest, ultimately killing him. After Justin died, Mosley and Meyers searched for the safe and found it in a closet. The safe, however, was locked. Meyers also found Cates' handgun in the home, which he loaded. The pair returned to the kitchen, where they attempted to clean up the crime scene using ammonia. They wrapped Justin's body in a blanket and put it in the trunk of Mosley's car. They then ransacked the house, taking the safe, some jewelry, and credit cards. Meyers also filled some bags with Justin's clothing. They loaded everything into Mosley's car and left the house around 2 p.m. As they hit the road, Mosley's paranoia kicked in. He was convinced they were being tailed. He veered off course, taking side roads to a secluded spot where they pulled over to check for any incriminating bloodstains. Meyers dug through the bags, hitting the jackpot when he nabbed Justin's wallet, stuffed with over $100. They dashed back to Mosley's place, dumping their loot in his room. Hauling the safe upstairs was a workout, but they powered through, swapping clothes and scheming their next adventure. Mosley suggested dumping the body in West Alexandria, a spot he knew like the back of his hand. They opted for a field near Gratis instead, where they hid the body behind a log, like a dark secret. Mosley drove into the field, and they lugged the body to its final resting place. Meyers doused the corpse with ammonia and septic enzymes, a gruesome attempt to cover their tracks. But Meyers wasn't done yet. He wanted to put a few bullets in the body, just for good measure. Mosley handed over the stolen gun, and Meyers fired 2 shots, the gun jamming on the third. After a quick fix, they fled the scene, leaving behind a trail of evidence. Their next move was to ditch Justin's laptop in a Brookville dumpster. A quick pit stop in Englewood scored them a crowbar, which they used to crack open the safe back at Mosley's. But instead of the promised $20,000, they found a bunch of random junk: paperwork, coins, bullets, and gun accessories. They salvaged what they could, burning the rest in a backyard bonfire, along with their bloody clothes. When Cates, Justin's stepdad, walked in the door around 3:30 p.m., he knew something was off. A table was out of place, rugs were missing, and his safe and handgun were gone. He and his wife tried to reach Justin, but his phone was still in the house. They called the cops, and soon officers were on the hunt for a car with a distinctive missing back window, covered in plastic and red tape. Cates mentioned that Meyers had swung by the day before in that very car. Warren County detectives tracked down the vehicle in Clayton, where Meyers was chilling at Mosley's house. They brought Meyers in for questioning, but he played dumb, denying any involvement in Back's disappearance or the burglary. After the interview, Meyers was sent back to Mosley's house, while Mosley was taken to the station for his turn in the hot seat. When the detectives finished grilling Mosley, they brought him back home, but not before getting some juicy info. Armed with new intel, they had Clayton police arrest both Mosley and Meyers and haul them back to the station. Meyers eventually cracked, admitting he was present when Mosley stabbed Justin, but claimed he didn't know it was going down. He denied shooting the body, pinning that on Mosley. But Mosley overheard Meyers' confession and sang a different tune when questioned again. He confessed to the crime but implicated Meyers in planning the burglary. Meyers, caught in a lie, changed his story again, admitting to shooting the body in a lame attempt to misdirect and buy the garrote materials. He still denied being involved in the murder, claiming he was in shock and disbelief. Meanwhile, Preble County deputies found Justin's body, thanks to Meyers' vague directions. The game was up, and both Meyers and Mosley were going down for the crime. On October 17, 2014, Meyers' fate was sealed in court when he received a death sentence, becoming the youngest inmate on Ohio's death row. He awaited his execution at Chillicothe Correctional Institution. In contrast, Mosley received a life sentence on November 14, 2014, and is currently imprisoned at Ross Correctional Institution. Now, it's time for today's subscriber pick. In the small town of Oakwood, a chilling crime shook the community to its core. Tommy Gluem, a troubled 15-year-old, had a history of run-ins with the law, but nothing could have prepared the townsfolk for the horror that was to come. It was a fateful night, and the tension was palpable. Tommy had been arguing with his rival, Jake Landerway, for weeks, and their feud finally came to a head. In a fit of rage, Tommy snapped, and with a single deadly stroke, he ended Jake's life. The community was left reeling, and Tommy was promptly arrested and put on trial. The prosecution presented a damning case, and Tommy's fate seemed all but sealed. But what happened next was even more shocking. As the judge delivered the guilty verdict, Tommy's eyes blazed with a fierce intensity. He suddenly lunged at the judge, a hidden weapon glinting in his hand. Chaos erupted in the courtroom, with lawyers and spectators scrambling for cover. In the chaos that followed, the struggle left Tommy's face bloodied, as shown in the picture. Ultimately, he was fatally shot by a security guard, his life slipping away in a pool of blood. This tragic end raises a haunting question. Did justice prevail, or did Tommy's demise perpetuate the cycle of violence that had defined his life? Some say Tommy's fate was a consequence of his own actions, a grim reminder that violence only breeds more violence. Others argue that the system failed him, that a troubled youth was left to spiral out of control without the support he so desperately needed. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Alyssa Bustamante. Alyssa Bustamante, a teenager from Missouri, caused quite a stir in her small town in 2009. Things were usually calm until accusations flew that the 15-year-old Alyssa had killed her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth. Alyssa's actions mirrored something out of a horror movie. She lured Elizabeth into the woods under the guise of fun, only to then strangle, stab, and bury her. What's even more unsettling is the fact that Alyssa documented the entire ordeal in her diary, almost as if she took pride in her gruesome deed. The case captured national attention, triggering widespread discussions about the concept of evil, the potential for redemption, and the adequacy of our justice system in dealing with troubled adolescents like Alyssa. The evidence presented against her was deeply disturbing, particularly her diary entries that revealed a chilling preoccupation with death, reminiscent of a plot from a psychological thriller. The courtroom proceedings were incredibly intense. Alyssa surprised many by admitting to her crimes, sparing Elizabeth's family the ordeal of a trial. However, during the sentencing phase, emotions ran high for the victim's family, as they grappled with the profound loss of their young daughter once again. Alyssa's defense team tried to humanize her, citing her rough upbringing and mental health struggles. But when it came down to it, she had to face the music. In a rare moment of emotion, she apologized to Elizabeth's family. But some folks weren't convinced, given the cold-blooded nature of her crime. And then, the moment of truth. The verdict. Life in prison, with a glimmer of hope for parole down the line. Plus, an extra 30 years tacked on to drive home the severity of her actions. Aiden Fucci. While Alyssa Bustamante's case gives us chills, Aiden Fucci's crime is equally horrific. He brutally stabbed 13-year-old Tristan Bailey 114 times on Mother's Day in 2020. The community's celebrations turned to horror when Tristan's lifeless body was found in a wooded area of St. Johns County, Florida. The suspect, 14-year-old Aiden, a fellow student at Patriot Oaks Academy and resident of the same area as Bailey, was captured on video walking alongside her on Saddlestone Drive, the same location where her body was found. As the investigation unfolded, incriminating evidence against Aiden began to surface. A buckknife matching a fragment found in Bailey's scalp was retrieved from a nearby pond, linking Aiden to the crime. Blood-stained clothing and shoes were discovered in his bedroom, along with a notebook filled with disturbing drawings, painting a disturbing picture of the accused. What started as a search for a missing girl quickly turned into a murder investigation with Aiden at the center. As the legal proceedings commenced, the case against Aiden grew stronger. Initially charged with second-degree murder, the weight of the evidence led to an upgrade to first-degree murder, indicating premeditation and the calculated brutality of Bailey's death. Aiden found himself standing before the court, his future uncertain as the judicial system weighed his fate. In a startling twist, just before jury selection was scheduled to commence in February 2023, Aiden changed his plea to guilty, drastically altering the trajectory of his trial. The presence of the knife, blood-stained clothing, and a chilling Snapchat selfie taken by Aiden while in the back of a police car all contributed to painting a grim picture of the night Tristan Bailey lost her life. Throughout the legal proceedings, Aiden maintained a composed demeanor, displaying little emotion through his facial expressions and gestures. Subsequently, Aiden received a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Rumors circulated that he had even boasted to fellow inmates about his actions, asserting their authenticity. Joavan Djovani. Last on the list is Joavan Djovani, who was led to the gallows in the same courtroom, where he had been brutally mutilated and was hanged right in front of the judges who had condemned him to this fate. In the heart of Florence, Italy, a tragic event unfolded on May 24, 1395, that would leave an indelible mark on the city's history. Giovanni, at just 15 years old, stood before the stern faces of the city's judges, accused of the crime of sodomy, a charge that was often used to punish those who defied the conventional norms of society. The atmosphere was heavy with tension, as the young boy's fate hung in the balance, his future resting in the hands of men who were more concerned with upholding the status quo than seeking true justice. As the judges delivered their guilty verdict, the city's merciless justice system struck swiftly, punishing the young boy with brutal severity. In a horrifying display, he was castrated in the courtroom, his screams filling the room as the judges watched with icy detachment, their faces twisted in cruel disdain. The punishment was a stark reminder that the city showed no mercy to those who dared to be different. But the cruelty didn't end there. Moments later, Giovanni was led to the gallows, erected in the very same courtroom, and hanged in front of the same judges who had just witnessed his mutilation. The young boy's life was brutally extinguished, his body left to dangle in front of the city's elite. The courtroom, once a symbol of justice and fairness, was transformed into a theater of horror, where a young life was sacrificed to satisfy the prejudices of the time. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.